afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Howberry Hills Farm. It is a spectacular day. It's not too hot, and we're glad it stopped drizzling for a while. I'm using the microphone purely for our guests at home that are watching this live stream as well as we send this into the world, the message of hope into the world. I want to start off by thanking our hosts, Andy and Doris, for the fascinating, fabulous, beautiful facilities that they made available for this event. It truly appreciated. Thank you so very much, Andy. And then obviously our guests of honor, everybody present today. Thank you so much for coming out to listen to the man himself, the gentleman with the passion, with the vision, with the drive to get this done, the job that we are all so passionate about. My name is Rian. For those who haven't met me, I was the guy that started here in your town on my bicycle and rode all the way to Lambert's Bay. I am currently also director of CapeXit. My portfolio is public relations, marketing, and everything that goes with that. So from my side, thank you so very much for coming out. Honestly, sincerely appreciate it. I'm going to hand over the mic. We're going to do this informally. This is a chat. This is not a speech. This is not a Sunday sermon. This is a chat about CapeXit, about Western Cape independence, and the vast, immense possibilities that holds for this part of the world. Des will elaborate, but from my side, I have it in my blood. It is a passion of mine. We have to get this done. And with people like yourselves being out there, helping us with this, it's the only way forward. We have to stand together and do this as one. So without further ado, our operations director of operations or operational director, whichever way you want to cut it, Mr. Des Palm. Thank you so much, Des.
I'm not always operational, but you are. I'm so glad Rian says this is not a speech because I'm absolutely rubbish at speeches. I prefer to talk. And what we're going to talk about is I want to talk about realities and I want to talk about options. We have realities that differ. But my realities differ from the realities of my children. I want to talk about the realities that we all have in common. The very first reality we have in common is when you leave home, you check that your burglar alarm is on, that your electric fence is switched on, that your garage door is closed, you make sure the sliding gate opens, you make sure the gate closes. That's a reality that we've become used to. You drive past the police station and you see the police station is being looked after by a security company. You know the company very well because the reality is you got their number on speed dial, the armed response company. Nowadays you find the reality of black economic empowerment is sidelining people like never before. We've got 114 race-based laws against any white person getting a job. That's a reality. We face the reality of corruption every day. COVID, 500 billion rand disappeared. I did a sum. If you live for 80 years and you never sleep and you spend money 24 hours per day, to spend 500 billion, you've got to spend 12,056 rand every minute. And that's the small amount that disappeared. This country is sitting with a national debt of 5 trillion rand. That's a reality. Another reality that will never go away is expropriation without compensation. It's a reality. It's being written, or not being written into the Constitution, they're changing Article 25. It's a reality. Have you read exactly what it says? It doesn't say that we may take your farm. It says we may take any asset. Your boat, your caravan, your bank account, your house. They may take it. They're going to put it in the Constitution. It will become a national law. That's a reality. So the realities are stacking up against us. And now we've got to look at what are the options. First option is, I can immigrate. Personally, I'm too hard to immigrate. I won't. I was born in the Cape. This is my province. I am of the soil of the Western Cape. This is the air that I started breathing when the doctor whacked my backside. So I will not immigrate. You will not push me off what is mine. Next option, we can accept the status quo and say, let's pretend we live in La La Land and this is going to become better. Well, good luck with that one. It won't. If it hasn't become better in 26, 27 years, the chance of becoming better is 0. So it will not become better. You've got a cycle of corruption and a cycle of, let's be nice and call it mismanagement of this country that will never, ever, ever be able to be reversed. So that's the second option, so it won't work. Now we come to the option that we were looking at since we started CapeXit in 2018. In fact, I started a thing, or organization called Western Cape Action Forum way back in 2010, and we already had independence on the radar then. In 2018, we decided we have to now structure this, we have to formalize it, and we got to the point, you often hear people say enough is enough. It's a farm murder, the keyboard warriors will hit that poor computer, enough is enough, can't carry on like this. You must now get to the point where you say, we now have enough of hearing enough is enough. You now got to get up and you've got to take ownership, not of your future, your children, your grandchildren. But here's the catch, we will have to make it happen. We can't leave it for the next generation to make it happen. We got to the point where we decided that what is the only viable option available? And we thought very long and hard and deep about it. The only option is independence. You can cut this whichever way you want to. You can look at it whichever way you want to. You can throw it up in the air how many times you want to. Independence is the only viable, sustainable option. So when CapeXit decided this is the option, we realized that we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not the first guys to say that. In fact, it happened successfully 231 times already in the world, where a part of the population decided we had enough, we're cutting the ties, we're doing our own thing. Successfully, 231 times. At the moment, there's 114 countries busy doing the same as what we're doing. The latest one, if you keep up with the news, is actually Texas. Texas decided we had enough. Why did they decide that? They said, we are the biggest contributor to the national domestic product of the United States of America. And we don't get all the money back. So we're going to do it on our own. And we read that, and it's like they're telling our story. Because the Western Cape contributes, and we always quote the figure of 2017, but this is true of every financial year. In 2017, we contributed 632 billion rand to the national, the GDP, gross domestic profit. 632 billion. So keep that figure in your mind. We got back that year 50 billion, of which 10 billion was a grant with special conditions. So in fact, we only got back 40 billion, not 50. The 10 billion, the conditions were that there's got to be certain cross-border employment of people outside the Western Cape, which came down to a cadre of employment. So we got back 8%. That's not the exception, that's the rule. We get 8% back of what we contribute. 632 billion. We get back 50 billion. The budget of the Western Cape government for the last financial year was 77 billion. So we get to the first point that people will say, how are we going to survive economically? There's your first answer. If we can keep the 602 billion, we can multiply the current budget 9 times. So that's the first point. So it's economically viable, or it starts being economically viable just from that point. So Texas is looking at it. There's a small country called West Papua, which is busy doing it. Now, West Papua is similar to our African states. I saw the other day they were standing in the road holding up pieces of cardboard, written on with a cokie. We say, welcome to the Humanitarian Council of the United Nations. They are doing it. So how are they doing it? How did the 231 countries do it? They are doing it according to international law. So just park that idea, and we'll come back to that now. If you look at America, North, South, and Central California is busy saying, no, we want to be out. So we look at the African continent, and secession is not new in the African continent. You're sitting with Botswana, you're sitting with Lesotho, you're sitting with Swaziland, you're sitting with Namibia. In December last year, we became a member of the Organization of Emerging African States. When we joined, we found out that the Venda people in Mpumalanga is busy working towards self-determination or independence. We'll get to that difference just now. We know that the Zulus in KwaZulu-Natal is sitting and they are making noises. They want to get out. So I said yesterday, the South African government is going to have quite a pickle if we go independent, KwaZulu-Natal goes independent, and the Northern Cape goes independent. They're going to become a landlocked state. They have to ask us very nicely to use our ports. But so we're not doing something new. So let's get back to the difference between people talk about self-determination, and you, especially up north. Now, if I say up north, people outside the Western Cape, they talk about self-determination, but they talk about an internal process where they want to determine their own language, they want to clean their own streets, they want to do their own services, their own water, their own electricity. Correct, that is self-determination. Quite often people will say, you guys are going to be like Urania. No, we won't. Urania is a privately owned piece of land in which they're selling shares, and you buy a share and you've got the right to develop, build a house, whatever. That is not self-determination in the sense of becoming what we aim for, a sovereign, independent country. I spoke to the guys in Urania some time ago, and I said, you've got one problem, and that problem is called expropriation without compensation. Because you sit in the bigger municipality, and you're still part of South Africa. So you can do on your piece of land whatever you want to. I can come along and say thank you. Under the constitution of this country, I expropriate Urania. So there's a very clear difference, because everybody outside the Western Cape are sitting as a minority within a vast majority. And they're fighting to have those small pockets of rights, and they have self-determined in that sense, self-determination. We're saying the minorities in the Western Cape, in terms of the South African minorities, are forming the majority here. So we're talking about white, brown, Khoi, San, Muslim. Those guys are still forming the majority here. The brown people, some take exception to the word colored, brown colored people, they are 49% of the population in the Western Cape. It so happens, I think the language of Afrikaans is also being spoken by 49% of the people. So CapeXit is going for sovereign, sometimes called external self-determination. How do we do that? The most crucial factor that you need is the will of the people. When you read our document, you'll see our document says two things right in the beginning. The document called the Road to Independence. It says that we who are driving CapeXit are ordinary people. Building contractors, restaurant managers, estate agents. We're not political scholars, we're not doctors. We're people that got to the point, like Rian did with the cycle tour, where we said, okay, hang on. We can't just say enough is enough anymore. Let's stand up and do something. That's the first point. The second point is that we point out there, is the entire exercise of independence is subject to the will of the people. If the people of the Western Cape decide they don't want independence, then we can stop today. Put the mic down, I can walk away and I can go fishing. So your most important process is to get the will of the people on your side, but registered. Not a Facebook like, not a WhatsApp saying, I like you guys. We have a form that asks your name, your cell phone number, your ID number, and there's 2 blocks. It says, will you vote in a referendum for independence? Will you support independence? You sign it and you date it. So at the end of 2019, we had about 7,000 of those. As of last Sunday, we had 775,000 of those. Okay, that's the growth in just over a year. So we need to get to 1.6 million. How we get to that figure? You have to have 50% plus 1% support of the people who are registered with the IEC in the Western Cape. Only those people can vote in a referendum. So why?
I'm not a citizen, so I can't vote.
After independence, where are you from?
England.
After independence, we'll give
I've been
you,
here 40 years.
we're going to give you dual.
40 years.
We're going to give you dual citizenship after independence.
Thank you.
I had the same conversation this morning. I had a conversation. Yeah, I had a conversation with this morning with a gentleman of 82 years old outside Plet. He's a German national. He's been here 62 years. I said to him, Hans, just worry. After independence, it's anyway, it's an economic stupidity not to give people dual citizenship. Absolutely. So we took the figures of the IEC and we divided it by 2 and we added 1 person and we came to 1.555 million people. We rounded it off to 1.6. So that's the figure that we need. People say to me, or say to us, it's going too slow. We've got to get the figure. Just take everyone that's registered and ask them to bring 1 person. That's the perfect world. The world that CapeXit is living in, and it's a fact, that if you tell us we can have a referendum tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, we're going to say no thank you. Why? Because we're not ready. First of all, we've got to have the 1.6 million. People refer to Catalonia and say Catalonia failed in their secession attempt. Yes, they did. Why? Because of 2 reasons. Number 1, the Constitution of Spain does not allow the fragmentation of the sovereign state of Spain. So there they are, in the gate. The second thing is they did not have the will of the people. So what makes us different? What's different is that we've got Section 235 in our Constitution. Section 235 was written in April 1994 after the Freedom Front Plus via General Constance Viljoen threatened Mandela and said they would disrupt the election if you do not write this clause into the Constitution. So it was done. We're happy about that. That clause gives us the right to strive for sovereign independence. But there's a but. The but is this. There was never any law written to underpin Section 235. So we can't go to the Constitutional Court and say we refer to matter Johnny versus Spitty, and in that matter the court carried Article 235 and it confirmed the right. There is no law. But we're happy that we've got it in there that allows us to do what we're doing. That should remove a lot of fear from people in terms of we can't do it and the ANC will not allow it. I'm not calling them the national government, the ANC. The biggest farce that people can come up with is you must please separate party and state. No, you can't. Because the ANC is the state. So, they said the ANC won't allow it. We said, no, that's fine. We've got Section 235. However, the process we've got to follow is this. We have to get the support of the people. If you don't get that first, you can write publications, you can write letters, you can send up smoke signals with a blanket. It's going to mean nothing. Get the support of the people, which is the biggest requirement. Then the next move would be, we now audit the database. We say, here's the 1.6 million people. And we now ask the Premier of the Western Cape, like, who's the guy that said, please sir, may I have some more? Oliver Twist. We say, please sir, may we have a referendum? And the Premier already some time ago said, I will never allow a referendum in the Western Cape. Which is fine, we're expecting it. We have to tick the box. So once we've ticked that box, we then inform the President of South Africa, whoever that may be at that stage, that we have an audited support in the Western Cape by the people of the Western Cape. This is their expressed will. Because what you're doing is you have to create the reality on the ground. There's nothing that actually makes anything successful like the reality. They cannot ignore the reality. Reality scares the living daylights out of politicians. And we're having very interesting conversations already with them. And the reason why we're having conversations, CapeXit at the moment has got the second biggest support base in the Western Cape. We're actually sitting just below the DA, and they had 1.1 million. And we're non-political. But they're scared. Because they think if we now become a political party, it's all over. Done. Writing is on the wall. The good news for them is we won't. Because we believe that we're in this mess because of politics. That is what landed us in this mess. So we will then inform the South African government. The President of South Africa has only got the ability to call a national referendum. He can instruct the local government under the Western Cape Constitution as well as the national one to call a referendum. We expect the ANC to say no. We expect that, but we have to tick the box. With this process, parallel, we're running according to international law, and there's two articles, Articles 1 and Articles 20 of international law. It's the humanitarian and political article. According to that, the 231 countries seceded. According to that, West Papua is at the moment going for secession. And those two articles clearly says, the people, it doesn't say a political party. Political parties run around and say, you can't do this without a political party. Bad news, yes we can. We are doing it without a political party. Because that regulation states the people, or all people, who share a common language, 49% Afrikaans, common history, common culture, may secede if you have the majority support. There it stops, there it draws a line. So now you're at the point where you go to the international instruments, United Nations, the Geneva Convention, international courts, and you say, here's the audited database of the support, here's the notice to local government, to national government, we're now on your doorstep. The question is, the ANC will ignore it, that's fine. However, the ANC undersigned both Articles 1 and Articles 20. And it's been ratified in the South African Parliament. So they can say no if they want to, that is there. There's an international law that states any state who actually violates the humanitarian rights of its citizens will be in a position where the wish and the demand of the citizens will top or, what do you call it? Supersede, eh?
Trump.
Will trump. It will Biden, it will trump. It will trump the wishes of that state. The will of the people is sacrosanct in the international community. You can't get away from that. Should we then be in a position where they say no, then only can you declare a UDI, Unilateral Declaration of Independence. You can't declare it now. You can't go out and pick a fight with somebody and say, you've now gave me two blue eyes, I'm going to secede. It's not going to work. The international world will crucify you. Economically, they will kill you. There is one right way of doing this. And you're only going to get one chance of doing this. There's no use jumping the gun and threatening the Premier of the Western Cape and say, I want a referendum tomorrow. It's not going to work. So that is the road that we're on at the moment. there are, and normally with sessions like this, I'll go more to the questions from your side, because every person sits with a different question, and we elaborate and we give you more information on that. The road to independence, let's look at the system of government we propose. We're looking at something similar to the Swiss canton system. The Swiss canton system is very simple. We are looking at 6 different districts in the Western Cape. So if you look on the voters map, you'll see there's 6 different areas: Central Karoo, Garden Route, up the West Coast. We see those as the 6, call it cantons. Each of those district governments will be subdivided into municipal areas. So we go back to the old system, and I'm young or old enough, which way you want to approach it, to remember the days of municipalities and divisional councils. More to your rural areas, divisional councils. So we go back to the system of municipal governance. Because we're talking direct democracy, when a direct democracy happens, you decentralize as much power as you can from the central government down to the people. Our coloured friends, our brown friends, are right in asking us, or saying to us, before 1994, we were sidelined. Yellow whiteys, of course, were sidelined. But now, after 1994, the black government has sidelined us. And then you come to the question of trust. They say, how can we trust you that you're not going to sideline us again? Then you explain to them that the direct democracy is exactly where you're going to govern yourself. The people will be governed by the people. Simple concept. Mitchell's Plain, where all the brown friends live, is going to be governed by Mitchell's Plain. I live in Tableview. I've got no idea what's going on in Mitchell's Plain. They know what's going on there. Their biggest problem, or their biggest bugbear in Mitchell's Plain, is they go to the police station, and the guy behind the counter is a Xhosa. He doesn't understand Afrikaans, he doesn't understand English, but he's got to serve the community. The people of Mitchell's Plain should work in Mitchell's Plain. In Tableview, we're going to run Tableview. But in Plet, you guys are going to run Plet. You know your community. You know what the issues are, what the challenges are. It differs from community to community. Tableview, we've got a massive beachfront erosion problem. They don't have that in Mitchell's Plain. They've got a drought problem. So they'll sort out their own thing. So you explain to them what the direct democracy is about, and the fact that you can't be sidelined if we're in a direct democracy, and you guys are 49% of the population, and we as whites are 16%. So we cannot possibly sideline you. But the problem is we're being indoctrinated by a one-party state top-down government. That's what we got.
Dictatorship.
Absolute dictatorship. You've got people sitting in a Thule house that one of them one day said the people should actually move out from the Cape back to the Transvaal because the Cape's a different country. Now I can assure you, you've got people sitting in the Thule house making decisions that don't exactly know where the Cape is. But we are deciding that in the Cape you must do X, Y, and Z. Okay. It's not on, it can never work like that. The problem we have, or the challenge, is that the Western Cape government doesn't really have any teeth where it matters. Not really. A very simple example is during the lockdown they decided all you oaks that like to smoke, you can smoke. The national government said, no, you can't smoke. It was buy your smoke sometime, you can't smoke. So what does it help that you've got a Western Cape government, you've got your own Western Cape constitution, and you cannot make decisions where it matters? I'll really used a strong word. I said to a councillor one day, why don't you sort out the stone throwing? Because when I came down in Saturday morning, or this Friday, sorry, I actually came via Paul, via Worcester, via Robertson, because our R300 looked like a war zone. So, and the other way. We can't sort it out, because it's national mandate. I said, no, policing is. But you have got a provincial legislation that states any pedestrian on a national road may be locked up. Use it. No, they won't take on it. because they will carry disfavour with the 60% plus of their voter base that sits outside the Western Cape. I can assure you, as I stand here today, I do not want to be the DA, because they are in a tight corner. 64% of their voters are saying we want independence. Their problem is they have to maintain a national mandate. So that scares them. What scares them is the fact that 28% of ANC supporters said they want independence. Now make no mistake that CapeXit is very clear in saying that we want independence for everybody who lives in the Western Cape. Don't let a group come to you and say, we want to do X, Y, and Z, but we're going to stay in that corner, they're going to stay in that corner. It's not going to fly internationally. You're not going to be successful. The world will look at you and say, this looks pretty much like a Volksstaat again. So you've got to be very cautious. Now, because we say that, and we've got quite a bit over 50% of our registrations are from brown people. But we also have about 3-4% registrations which are from black people. And we're happy with that. We had a meeting one day with the chief from Khayelitsha, Chief Wiseman. And I'm very naughty when I meet with these folks. Walked into the meeting, and I looked him in the eye, and I said, Wiseman, tell me, you're black and I'm white, so are we going to have a problem? And Wiseman looked at me and he thought, yes, like what is this whitey going to come up now? I said, because let's quickly talk about what is real for us. You want food on your table, you want a roof over your head, you want a job. We agree on that, yes. I said, so therefore, what we need and what we want is outside the spectrum of race. So we can park white and black. You're happy? Yes, he's happy. So okay, now we talk. The question that the black people ask us is, what about us? After independence, what about where are we going? Nowhere, you stay in the Cape. Because don't for 1 minute think, I'm going to sort out Khayelitsha. I've built a project in Khayelitsha in 1993. It's a rover black. It's not an easy place. But I said to him, you are going to sort out Khayelitsha. Because that's what a direct democracy is about. You're going to clean up your own messes. And he started giving me their reasons what they see as being a mess. Law and order, no law. Illegal immigrants flooding over the border. Don't think because you're Xhosa, you can come over in a bus and you can plonk down in Khayelitsha because you're taking his job away. Before you get to the brown people saying that you're taking their jobs away. So sometimes we overlook the fact that the blacks that's been in the Western Cape and were born here, grew up here, they sit with the same problem that they can't find jobs now. They will tell what the community in Mitchell's Plain tells us. Mitchell's Plain, you find a grandmother that's living in a backyard shack. She's been living there for 2 or 3 generations. The new Okie from the Eastern Cape comes in, he throws a couple of bricks on the N2, and he goes right to the top of the list. The Wisemans of this life suffers the same problem. He says, because we're not violent, we're not stoning vehicles, so these churches come in and they do this and they get a house. That is why 28% of the ANC is supporting independence. Because they know what it looked like before. They see where the infrastructure is now. If you're not part of that magic 6-person clique up top, you don't count. Well, you do count every 4 years. So, why don't we then try and do this or find a solution politically? To find a solution politically, what must I do? I must win at the polls. I must become the ruling party in the sense that I can influence the process. So, not too long ago, our very dear DA friend said that they were going to a coalition with the ANC. And our WhatsApps and our Facebook groups were like on fire within minutes. I had a phone call from opposition party politician, and his opening words was, what the hell are they saying? And they quickly recovered, what's the famous political quote? Oh, you took it out of context. And they went back and they said, no, we're talking about a national coalition. and it boomeranged on them spectacularly. Because the 62% of the voters in the Western Cape said, hang on, if you can jump into bed so quickly on a national level with ANC, you're going to jump into bed the Western Cape. So let's say a political party goes flat out and they're canvassing and they're getting votes and they get to the point where they can force a coalition scenario with the DA. And after all that effort, the DA turns around and says, come ANC, come, let's do this. So what have you done? You've wasted another 4 years. You wasted another 8 years. Politics is a very fickle animal. You can't control it. So that's why we said we will not go the political route. Never, ever. We will not become a political party. In fact, CapeXit will not become part of the new government. We're not fishing for positions. I always say I want to retire and go fishing after independence. It's a nice prospect. So we're not punting this, we're not hanging our support base onto any political party. A political party must position itself towards independence, not necessarily towards CapeXit, but towards independence, and then work out this monkey puzzle of where they are going to be after independence. But politically, if we did see it as an opportunity or an option, we would have all gone and voted for party X, Y, or Z. So it's not going to happen. Politics is a very dirty game. So I'm just going to cover one or two things that normally comes up as questions. People say, and let me go back to realities. Your government pension fund may not be safe anymore. How's that for a reality? I always say when I grew up, my dad said, just do me a favor, find a job, government job, because then your pension is safe. Thank heavens he's passed on a long time ago, because he would not believe what he's hearing. You realize that the ANC is proposing, and this is another reality, an unemployment grant for all unemployed people between 14 and 34. So we asked, how exactly do you get to 34? They were previously disadvantaged. Don't be funny now. They must get a grant. Can you imagine, we're already a welfare state. We already have small number of people supporting 40 million. So now they're adding another grant. Bad news is you guys are paying for it. Any government does not have money. They don't have money. Where do they get money from? They work with your money. So we've got to stop saying enough is enough and wake up. You can't even smell the roses, we passed that. And really take ownership of the Western Cape and do something about it. And that something is independence. Give me another option, we'll talk about it. I haven't found one yet. In 2 years of very hard searching. So the government love every taxpayer. Every person that stops at the garage and fill up his tank, of which the government takes 38 cents of every rand. So don't think because the fuel price is hiking that crude oil is costing more. No, the government needs more money. Because the government is in a catch-22. They can only promise the masses. And they've got to keep on promising the masses. So they promised them, I think they started with fridges and stoves and houses and cars. And now we're getting serious. Because now they're promising expropriation, unemployment grants. Cow can't be milked anymore. Cow's dead. When the masses stand up the first time that they cannot pay grants, it is destruction. Okay. These are the realities. They're not going to go away. It's not going to become better overnight. We're not going to have somebody walking in with a magic wand in the parliament and say, okay, poof, now we've got to go back to like it was. They can't. They're on a downward cycle. Somebody called it a fiscal cliff. A friend of mine said, it's a train that's hurtling towards a fiscal cliff. The first coaches are over. The Western Cape is at the back. We better unhook that coach very fast. Otherwise you're going to have a problem. There's no ways they can come back. We find that some of the bigger economists They used to put a spin on independence. Say, oh no, but you know, with this, about that. Slowly but surely, these guys, listen to their speeches, listen to their talks. Slowly they're starting to turn. Slowly they're saying, but you know, independence can actually work. You know it can work. We're looking at the teal tax system, total economic activity levy, devised by a South African, I think Nick van Zyl in 1986. Very simple system. Each and every rand that goes into your bank account gets taxed 0.5%. Each and every rand that goes out of your bank account gets taxed 0.5%. So in total, 1%, which is 1 cent of a rand. When you do that, you increase your tax net 27-fold. And you can do away with your company tax, your personal tax, your VAT, your tax on fuel, can be done away with. That's the second leg of being able to stand on your own economically. We're not even touching on the fact of investment. When we started CapeXit, I always say we're talking to the guy in the street. Guy's getting a salary, your future, the future of your children. And for many months now, we realized that we have corporate, blue chip, listed companies moving to the Cape. From Joburg. Not from overseas, from Joburg. We now had an IT company where the guys contacted us and say, we're an IT company, we're 3 directors, we've got 26 employees, we're moving to Betty's Bay, all 3 of us, with all our people. Here we are, use us, whatever you want, free of charge. The corporate world is waking up and realizing that they have to also now stop saying enough is enough and get their backsides to where you have the only possible future in South Africa. If everybody has never been to Joburg in the last 2 or 3 years or any other place, go and take a trip, see what it looks like. Go over to the wild side of South Africa. So a question comes up, people say, what about my pension? What about my salary? I work for the Navy. I work for Department of Nature. When you go to the website, there's a document called the Road to Independence. If you read part 3 of that document, it speaks about per capita taking over of assets. There's no international law that says when we secede that we have to take over any portion of that magical 5 trillion rand debt. There's no international law that says that. You can go and fight it out in courts, so I don't have to pay you a blue cent. However, there's fair practice. And fair practice started happening when Belgium seceded from the Netherlands. And then they adopted the per capita approach, which is a very simple process. It says, whatever my percentage of population is against that of the host state, I will adopt the same percentage of your national debt. So round figures, we're 10% of the national population. So let's go to the 5 trillion, we adopt 10%. There's going to be some maths, but done to that 10%. We're going to look at simple things like the decommissioning cost of Kuba, which is $500 million. We did speak to Eskom at one stage. They said they had 500 million rand. Operative word, they had it. I don't know where it is now, but they had it. So you're going to bring that into account. You're going to bring into account things like the 500 billion that disappeared from COVID aid money. So the 500 billion won't be the final sum. Let's assume it is the final sum. So you heard that in 2017 we contributed 632 billion to the GDP. So we can actually take 632 minus the 500 billion for 1 year and say, ouch, we've got 132 billion left. The budget this year is 77 billion. We can still make it for the first year. That is how feasible it is to say goodbye to South Africa. Then under the per capita approach, you will take over all assets once you've come to this gentleman agreement. Now, people tell us that it will never work. The ANC will declare war. The ANC has got 2 problems when they do that. The one is that the world will look at them and say, hang on, you're declaring war on your own people. Because remember, we haven't seceded yet then. So the moment you declare war on your own people, we can actually declare a UDI. It's a dangerous game to play, because the moment you're seen as the aggressor, the world will crucify you. I can't go out and say, okay, now we've got to sort this out, we need to pick a fight here. The world very cautiously and attentively follows the road that you're on. Make no mistake. The world knows what we're busy with. Make no mistake. We've got people overseas that represent CapeXit. We know it for a fact. So you can't go and be stupid and declare something that's going to bite you. So by the same token, the ANC can't just decide that we're going to declare war. Now, us guys at the military veterans, we actually talk about that tongue in cheek, because I've attended their military day in Blouberg, and I didn't know if I had to laugh or cry. Because if you see, I can't say if you see the level of discipline, because there is no discipline. But still, if they declare war, major mistake. So, when you get to the taking over of the state assets, everything reverts back to the seceding country. Your airports, your military bases, your territorial waters, everything, all these holes has been plugged here down your coast, or Mosgas or wherever, falls within territorial waters. It reverts to the new sovereign state. Like Articles 1 and 20, it's something they cannot argue with because they've undersigned it. We don't care if they're going to honor it, they've undersigned it. And that is the basis that your argument will hinge on internationally. They've undersigned it. So try and read that document, Road to Independence. It starts off by explaining how we get to 1.6 million, the system of government, and then it goes over to chapter 3 to the per capita approach. So I don't think there's anything else I want to tell you. I want you to ask questions, and don't think a question is silly or be scared to ask a question. Ask a question is the only way you can see that we know what we're talking about, and we don't know everything. We've got a firm belief that we surround ourselves with people that are knowledgeable and qualified. I'm a building contractor. What the hell do I know about politics? What's a dirty game? So one thing we're doing, just to elaborate on one point, the reason why we don't want a referendum tomorrow is I always say to the people, if you're on Facebook, what you see is 10% of what's happening. The 90% at the bottom consists of a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions, a lot of work. And part of that work is to now start writing policy papers on everything. Education, water, electricity, border control, maritime control. You have to write policy papers. The day when your referendum carries the yes vote, you cannot, and I've tested this with one of the politicians. I said to him, so tomorrow morning I'll come and I'll give you the keys of Cape Town. You're now independent. So tell me, how's your border control going to look like? He said, we'll have to move to get that in place. I said, no, you're already dead. You can't. You can't wait until the day to get the yes vote and then want to scurry around like headless chickens and try and do it. That's why we say we're happy with CapeXit's organic growth at the moment. The point where it's aiming to at 1.6, at that point we'll have the policy papers in place and we can carry on. So what's going to happen the day when the audited referendum results comes out, and we will most certainly not trust the IEC to do that. We will have some monitors from overseas. It comes out and it carries the yes vote. The moment it happens, you're now entitled under international law to close your borders. So you've got to exactly know where you're going to put up the sawhorses and park the containers and close the borders. Then your sovereign countries that supports you, under international law, to secede, you must have the support of one country, who's the member of the United Nations. We're talking to 5 of them at the moment, and they're all pro-independence. At this stage, they will not interfere, because they will not interfere with the affairs of a sovereign state, which currently is South Africa. The moment you get the yes vote, you have now effectively become a sovereign state. They can then step up and say to whoever's outside your borders, We don't think you must do that. It's not wise. Because remember, I think we've gone past double junk bond status 2 or 3 or 4 times already. That's the only sad extinction South Africa's got. We've gone through the basement floor. So international corporations and countries are sitting and looking and saying, we will not invest in South Africa. I won't invest in South Africa. As an English-speaking person, if you had a company in England, you will not invest in South Africa. I know that because we're looking at projects in Ghana. The investments going into Ghana is staggering. They are talking about, I think, a $6.1 billion oil refinery. It's going in there because the investor can see a return on his money. In South Africa, you can rather take your check, go past the robot and give it to the guy there because you'll have more joy out of it. However, countries and corporations are sitting and they're saying to us, the moment you become independent, we're there. One example, we're talking to the port of Rotterdam. The port of Rotterdam has been fully automated. There's, I think, 2 or 3 guys that sit behind a massive computer screen. The port of Cape Town is running at 33% efficiency. That is if it doesn't become wind-locked, or one of the old cranes doesn't pack up because they don't have spares for the old ones. 33% efficiency. So what will typically happen after independence is we will speak to the clever guys overseas and do things on what we call a BOT basis, which is build, operate and transfer. So they will all compete, for example, to automate the port of Cape Town. The guy that's successful will finance it, he will operate it for an agreed period of time, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and after that it will transfer as an asset in ownership to the new country. That won't cost you a single cent. And I know it works because we do student accommodations for universities on exactly the same principle. The technology giants in this world, you talk about Switzerland, you talk about the Netherlands, you talk about countries like that, are waiting for us to say we're independent. We will probably make Monaco look like a third world little place when that happens. And we experience the reality of it because people are coming, like the IT company coming from Joburg, we've got the askers saying the funds will be there, will be at your door, which is exciting because it shows you that if you base, and what independence is about for us is economic survival, nothing else, it's economic survival. We cannot survive economically in the current status quo, no chance of it. So it's exciting, to us it's exciting, to me it's exciting. I've seen this grown from when we started Western Cape Action Forum into CapeXit, and what's really exciting to me is the caliber of the people that we are getting on board. It is absolutely gobsmackingly exciting. We get people on board who's got a passion, who lives this, who pushes it, and they realize this is the only solution. It's the only way you can go. So I'm going to keep quiet, and I would like you to pop any questions. If they're difficult, I'll give them to Rian to answer. I'll take the easy ones. So the floor is open. Any questions?
Dis ek net graag vra. Jy het gepraat van die konstitusie. Ag, ons word beskerm, julle word beskerm deur artikel 235.
Ja.
Maar kan die ANC nie daai ding ook verander of dit wegvat?
Ja. So die vraag is of die ANC artikel 235 kan verander en kan wegvat. Die antwoord is ja, natuurlijk. Hulle kan dit doen, want hulle doen dit op grond van artikel 25. Ja. Onteiening van grond. Maar daar's internasionale wetgewing wat sê dat sodra jy bewus raak van die intensie, volledige anglicisme, intensie van 'n deel van die bevolking om te secesseer, kan jy nie die status quo verander ten koste van die humanitêre regte nie. So as hulle is klaar bewus ons wil secesseer, hulle weet van CapeXit, hulle weet van onafhanklikheid. As ons nou verander, dan gaan ons na die Organisasie vir Afrika State toe en sê, kyk wat doen hulle. Onthou so 'n ding kan aanleiding gee tot 'n onmiddellike secessie.
Maar hoe seker is ons van die ondersteuning van die magte daar buitekant in die wêreld, daar buitekant.
Ons het dit reeds as ons lid geraak het van die organisasie van Afrika State. Hulle doen wat hulle noem lawfare. Dr. John Levy konsentreer net op die wetsaspekte van successies.
Ek dink dis elke keer ons het deel geword van die organisasie. Dis
CapeXit. Ja, nie Suid-Afrika nie. CapeXit het 'n lid geword van die organisasie. As jy gaan kyk na die 231 successies wat plaasgevind het, kan jy uit al die modelle kan jy vat wat reg gedoen is en daai goue draad wat deurtrek is almal net volgens artikels 21 van internasionale reg. Het hulle gesê ons is seer. So die feit dat ons grondwet tans voorsiening maak daarvoor, hulle kan hom verander, ons sal ons net beroep op die oorspronklike grondwet. Want daai regte is gevestig van 1994 af in die grondwet. So, net soos daar 'n wet is wat sê enige persone wat verplaas is vir politieke doeleindes. Kyk dan de Noon was so groot. Nou is de Noon so groot soos hierdie stoep. Tegnies kan almal wat buite daai oorspronklike kern van de Noon val, word geklassifiseer as persone wat verplaas is vir politieke doeleindes. En jy kan hulle stemkrag wegvat in 'n referendum. So daar's baie kom ons noem dit in Engels worst case scenario's wat beskerm word deur internasionale wetgewing.
Ek dink daai is baie belangrik van miskien net seker maar dat
Ja.
Wat did I say? You make a burkie suffer, eh? The question was, what prevents the ANC from changing Article 235, under which we at the moment hinge our right to secession? And it's a very valid question because, like I said, they're busy changing Article 25, or Section 25, without asking anybody's permission. I think there were 90,000 objections. They will put them under the bed and drop the duvet and do what they want to do. However, we look at where are we protected under international law. Because remember, we're playing this out on the international arena, not on whether the ANC would or want to or will. So international law states that when you violate the humanitarian rights of a portion of the people, you are actually subjected to the international legislation which will allow the people to secede. You cannot go and willy-nilly change the constitution because you don't want the Western Cape to secede. So that is actually in law underpinning, like I just said now, there's a law saying that if people are displaced for political reasons, you can discount their support. Because we always hear they're coming to the Western Cape at 10,000 a month. The truth of that is, they come in at 10,000 a month, and 8,000 of them will probably not vote. So the ANC is miscalculating there, but they're not adding 10,000 votes a month to their support base. If you doubt that, go and look at how well they did from 1994 in the Western Cape. They've never ruled here. The Western Cape is different. The conditions in the Western Cape are different. Yes, ma'am.
This is deviating a tiny bit, but I read an article written by an international lawyer who stated, relating to land claims, exactly what we said about Rule 2.456, whatever, which is that they cannot claim the land because it's overridden by international law. Is that being so?
I'll give you, for instance, we've got a gentleman by the name of Rian Lieberton. He's in customs in the Netherlands. And now with the last election, Martin van der Veen actually lost his seat in Parliament. But they introduced the mad concept of expropriation to the Dutch government. And the Dutch government, I think September, October last year, actually adopted a resolution that should South Africa go ahead with it, they will immediately impose full-on sanctions because it's against international law. But you must realize what the game of politics is about. The game of politics is about promising you something, not doing it.
By promising someone else something.
Promising the masses something. Because come October this year, I need your vote. And the rest assured, come 2024, they're going to promise something more. We need your vote. But we don't put it past them that they're going to do their damnedest best to get it into the Constitution. In January there were some very serious meetings about that. They're currently having hearings about expropriation. But the moment it's being said, you know the whole smoke and the fire thing, if there's a smoke, there's a little flame burning somewhere. So, but there's a lot of protection under international law because it's been done 231 times already. So it's not that, again, that we're reinventing the wheel. We're going and we're looking at what did these guys do right? What did they do wrong? There's a concept out there called the velvet divorce. We had I don't know if any of you know Dr. Peter Hammond. Dr. Peter Hammond is quite a character. He will always tell you that he's been shot at, he's been locked up as a political prisoner, they tried to bomb him. He's a missionary. He was very, very involved in the independence of South Sudan. And I remember we also have a Veterans Association, and we sat one day in a veterans meeting, and he was at the head of the table, and he said to us, don't be surprised if the South African government give you the Western Cape. And I went like, what, that's nice. But now there's a reality around it, and this is the reality. The bigger you can build your support amongst the people, the bigger you can get that reality on the ground, the more you scare a politician. Because now the people are saying, there's a nice word in Afrikaans, gatvol. People saying we're gatvol of promises. We want to change the status quo and have the only option out that's sustainable and viable. The bigger you build that reality on the ground, the more the South African government has to face the fact that you have now become an organization with the biggest support base in the Western Cape. And then comes the term of a velvet divorce, which means let's sit and talk. Now, one thing we will not do is to talk and be caught into a political, constitutional scenario where we've got to fight in courts for 10 years or 20 years or 200 years. We're not interested. Under international rights, we have established the will of the people. Here it is, it's audited, signed at the bottom. The people want independence. The people doesn't want to talk. You had 27 years to talk. You had 27 years to do something. You're not going to get it right in the next 27. So the people are hard for that enough. They want out of here. So that is the route you've got to follow. And if the South African government is clever, they will realize that you are busy establishing the strongest trade partner on the African continent in the Western Cape. I'll give you an example. Rian introduced me, we had one awareness event out in Papua. He introduced me to a gentleman, and the gentleman is currently involved in the medical profession. He started his own company, he's the CEO of his own company. He's got 50 doctors on his panel, and they are starting to develop a portfolio around medical tourism. So go back the days when Chris Barnard did the first heart transplant. South Africa or Cape Town was a place to go to for heart issues. The Red Cross Children's Hospital is the place to go to for any problem with a child. Now we get people like that coming on board and saying, we're going to develop the medical tourism side of things. So that's why I say we're excited about what's happening.
How many of the 231 cases has been successful? All of them. So that gives us an idea of what we can expect.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of, the question was how many of the 231 were successful secessions? They all were. A lot of them came through a period of rebel wars and civil war, and eventually got to the point where people had to sit around the table because the people said, that's enough, we had enough, we're out of here. So they were all successful, but we look at each model and say, what did they do right, what did they do wrong? And like I say, they all kind of lean over to the international law which allows you to secede.
I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate if you don't mind. first of all, thank you for coming and explaining a whole lot of things and answering what I came here with a bunch of questions you answered in your talk. In the last few years, there have been quite a lot of groups popping up, not doing exactly what you do, but similar things. The biggest one probably being the Move 1 Million grouping, okay? And like some other people, I'm quite sure occasionally I've read a lot and I've gone, wow, click, click, click. All right, and then I've got disillusioned and I've left. My question to you is, in terms of your numbers, and I realize you've still got a whole bunch of work to do, that even if you got the numbers tomorrow, you can't actually move forward. I understand that. I don't know, because I've left that group, I want other various things on there, and especially with what you're doing, like recruiting people, you can't control the way people think and so on. You just hope you get the right people on board. That's partly what has happened to them. They've attracted a lot of what I consider to be the wrong people, which is why I left. But I mean, if you need an instant whack in numbers, I don't know what their membership is now. Maybe you're talking to them. There might be a whole bunch of numbers you can get pretty quickly. That's what I'm getting at.
The question is, why don't we link up or connect with Move 1 Million? The simple answer is the originator of Move 1 Million is a Portuguese gentleman. He left it exactly because there were dissent in the group. Now, CapeXit is getting hard copy registrations. So if 70% of the people in Move 1 Million lives outside the Western Cape, it means nothing to us. Can't work with that. We do not work on an emotional basis where we will actually get people involved emotionally and they say, yeah, we want to support this. We want people to look at this as cold, hard facts, make up their mind and register. Because at that point, he is already convinced of what the only options are and he's not going to disappear into the woodwork tomorrow. Move 1 Million is very much an emotional group where people are upset because X, Y, and Z happened, and they may register because of that emotion, and come referendum day, if they are in the Western Cape, they simply don't pitch. We feel the biggest commitment is to fill in a form, give your details, and I can call you tomorrow and say, Johnny, thank you, I got your form, and Johnny says, no, I'll support independence. That is a vote that you can count on. That's why I say, a lot of people say, you can have 20 billion Facebook likes if you got. It's just that, it's a Facebook like. Tomorrow the guy may not like you again.
No, sure.
How do you define who lives where? I mean, for instance, Plet consists of many ratepayers who own homes here, but who live elsewhere. So how do they fit into that?
The rule is you have to be registered within the Western Cape. So a lot of people say, I've got a holiday home in Plet, but I live in Joburg.
Yeah.
We say, change your address to your Plet address.
Yeah.
So you can vote in the referendum. So you have to be, that would be the litmus test, that you have to be registered with the IEC. So at the moment we've got 1 million eligible people that can vote who are not registered. Because they're politically disillusioned. If a person nowadays tells me, I don't even bother to vote, I know exactly why he's not voting. Because it's not going to change the situation. It's not going to change the status quo. Independence gives you an option. So we will absolutely embark on a registration drive as well, so people can register. But yeah, if property owners, absolutely. We will do it as per a normal political election where expats would be able to vote. And then we'll see how far we can broaden the actual base, which will give you a right to vote in the referendum.
So you have to squeeze every vote.
How do you just have it that if you live and work and own a property, any of those things, you live and work here?
Yeah.
In the Cape.
Yeah, the moment you actually live and work in the Cape, you probably live here and then you can register. Yeah.
Register on the vote as well.
Register with the IEC. Yeah. That's the basis that we use. Yes, ma'am.
You said that, change your address, just so I can understand. Are we saying that you must change your address so that you can vote, but you still live in Joburg, or you're saying change the address that you have to move here?
No.
Because then we're not in a situation then where we end up with people voting on what happens in the Western Cape that don't even live here.
Yeah, no. if you live in Johannesburg and you've got holiday property here, you change your address with the IEC to
No, what I'm
Plet.
saying is that you change it so that you're able to vote. But now
To
you
vote.
still live in Joburg and you're
Yeah.
voting
You can
on
do
Western Cape issues.
But it's
No,
fair.
that's fine because you're property owner in the Western
Yeah.
Cape. You're allowed to vote on
I'm
issues
trying to
here.
understand, are we
Yeah.
talking voting
Yeah.
or we're talking
Yeah,
actually
you-
living?
Yeah, you don't have to move to
Okay.
here. Yeah.
You can get dual citizenship.
Yeah.
It's called creative thinking.
Yeah, there's the example of a family trust which has 40 beneficiaries, all in Gauteng, but they could all change their address. Does that mean that you've got to be here on the voting day? I'm not talking about a referendum, I'm talking about a national election. I think you have to vote when you're registered, so you have to come in. But it doesn't matter because if you're registered here, live in Gauteng, comes voting day, you just don't vote. So at least that might have an advantage. And another quick question: the Northern Cape, how do the demographics of that province break down, and would it be an interest to bring it into the exercise?
The question is whether we bring the Northern Cape in at this point. We looked at the Western Cape from an economic point of view, from a viability point of view, and at the moment it makes sense to go the Western Cape on its own. The moment the Western Cape becomes independent, we are a new foreign country or sovereign country. We can then reach over the border to the Northern Cape and say, let's help you do this as well. The moment you include the Northern Cape, you've got to up your 1.6 million in numbers. It becomes very much a bigger exercise to do. The Western Cape is absolutely perfectly tailored to secede at this point. And then you'll see that we talk about phase 1 Western Cape, phase 2 Northern Cape, and phase 3 parts of the Eastern Cape. Now the Eastern Cape works will be on a municipal basis. So we'll take the closest municipality to you in the Eastern Cape. We look at the municipality and say, do you comply to the international standards that most of your people here who's registered to vote speak the same language, have the same history, have the same culture, background, da, 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 da. If the answer is yes, they have the right to approach the South African government, because they're in South Africa, they're not in the Western Cape, and say, we actually wish to secede as a municipality, which they're entitled to do, under exactly the same criteria that we're seceding. And once their vote carries a yes in the referendum, they can become incorporated, and the border, the Western Cape, will just do this. So that is when we talked about the Eastern Cape. We're not talking about the whole Eastern Cape, but parts of the Eastern Cape.
So you could become the old Cape Colony if you go
Yes.
far enough up the
Yes.
coast.
In effect, you can become the Cape Colony.
Sorry, a question that I don't understand politics, so there may be a more complex answer that I don't understand. But something that worries me is you keep referring to international standards. The international community's eyes are on us. They can't do this because the international community will say this and that. But you keep saying about humanitarian rights. But if we look at what's happened in a lot of Africa, the international community hasn't given a damn what's going on there. No matter what humanitarian things are happening there, they don't care. So what's to stop them not supporting us as we think they're going to?
The violation of those humanitarian rights were not in the context of a secession. It was just gross violation of humanitarian rights. The moment the country, West Papua at the moment, is calling for a secession because of the violation of the human rights being attacked, I think Indonesia is the host country. And that's why they're asking for a secession. So if you look at the 231 countries, a lot of them was based on human rights violation. Ours are based on constitutional human rights violation in terms of black economic empowerment, affirmative action, all these grants has been given out. So you don't have to base it on a physical attack. And I'm actually attacking you, knocking you over the head, and that's a human violation. There's a lot of subtle human violations that is happening all over the world. But some countries get to the point where they say, okay, we are here, we secede. We had enough of this.
But succession for us has got no real advantage, has it, for the international community? They don't necessarily stand to gain anything. So why would they support us if things got snarly here?
You're totally 100% wrong.
Okay.
The reason being that the international community consists of the United Nations member states. Netherlands is a member of the United Nations. They would love to trade with us tomorrow. I think Rian or somebody told the story about the ship that parked like this in the Suez Canal. And all of a sudden we've got to go around the Cape of Good Hope. The Cape of Good Hope, and I don't know who said it yesterday, has since time immemorial not lost an iota of its importance, being on the southern tip of Africa. So when we speak to countries like, I'll give you an example, Germany, we've got a doctor on board. His doctorate is in the creation of alternative green energy. Germany is busy building a boat, not a boat, a ship. A ship that we get rid of the boat. They're building a ship which will be based in Saldanha, which will go up to the equator. It will harvest the energy from trade winds and sea current. It will load the cells. It will go back to Saldanha and it will offload.
East Coast or West Coast?
West Coast. So why would Germany support us in terms of independence? Exactly because of that. They're going to have a trade partner. So the need to trade economically and stay viable is important to a lot of countries. And I can assure you, I've met the consul of Ghana the other day in Cape Town, and I jokingly said to him, so when we're independent, are we going to talk? He said, you can bet your bottom dollar we'll talk. Now that guy is slated to become the president of Ghana. So you would think a state in Africa, they're not going to talk to you because their buddies are here in the national government. Don't make no mistake. It goes about commerce, it goes about the well-being of their people, it goes about making money.
Your progression toward 1.6. You were at 70,000, you're at 750,000. Is that graph flattening? Do you need emphasis, or is it automatically going on a projection reach the 1.6 in time?
The question is the support graph or the registration graph flattening? I've actually did that graph the other day, I think since 2020, the beginning, and the graph goes like this. And it steadily climbs between 8,000 and 11,000 registrations per week. Which is, we spoke about 7,000 registrations, which means in a working day of 8 hours, there's 1,000 people registering.
What is the 1.6? Is it a percentage of the rest of that population? What percentage?
Yeah. 1.6 is 50% plus one person of the registered voters with the IEC. It's actually 1.555. We rounded off to 1.6.
And do you go and see the coloured communities and speak to them personally?
Question, do we go and see the coloured community? Yes, we do. When we started out, we decided to identify the community leaders. It's unbelievable. You must sit in a meeting and ask, who's the community leader here? The Khoi has got 17 factions, I think. The Khoi, just the Khoi. You've got people that says, I'm not brown, I'm Khoi. And people say, I'm not Khoi, I'm brown. So we very soon realized that that is a futile exercise. So we simply turned to the basis of community activists. And we've got a lady in the Swartland in Malmesbury. She runs the 10 regions of Malmesbury. They gave Rian a massive welcome with balloons and everything in Malmesbury. That is where we are effective, because we go into the community, we identify people who are already working in the community, they know them, and that's the way we get it.
Because politically they've been ignored.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think that everybody's sick of politics and we know it doesn't work. So I think that would be an excellent way of grabbing them.
Yeah, it's true. The brown
Maybe
community.
the first people to offer them something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We offer everybody the only chance out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the brown community has been sidelined. Before 1994, they've been sidelined. After 1994, but again, to repeat that, you have to make them understand that this is a direct democracy. I'm not going to rule over you.
Yes.
This is a we thing. It's not a me or a you thing. And once they cotton onto that idea, they like it, they support it. You've got to They've been alienated in all the processes. And they get these fancy promises every 4 years. And the day after the 4 years, everything is back to the same again, to normal, or the new normal. I did.
Handful in capital letters.
Handful in fat, bold capital letters.
They are.
There they are.
They
I know.
Okay, I understand there's nothing to do with politics at this point in time until independence. And afterwards?
Okay, how the system will work, when the referendum carries the yes vote, you're going into a 90-day phase of a transitional government. Now, the Western Cape has got its own constitution. It's the only one of the 9 provinces that's got its own constitution. The interesting fact is that the Western Cape has always governed itself. Since the Batavian times, the Western Cape had a constitution. That constitution was very tolerant, allowing Muslims to build mosques, and it was against slavery. That was when Jan van Riebeeck parked his 3 little cruisers here in the bay. So for the Western Cape to govern itself is not a foreign concept. So what will happen is the government, current government, provincial government, will stay in position without legislative powers. So they can't now go and make laws like they want to. Because the policy papers that's being developed will actually translate into shadow committees. And it's already happening. It's happened. The first place was Oudtshoorn. It's happening in Mossel Bay. It's now happening in Somerset West, where there are guys who are forming municipal oversight committees. And they populate these committees with people that's been in that municipality for 35 or 40 years. He's taken early retirement or golden handshake, and they put him in a committee. And when he walks into the front door, everybody says, Pieter is back. Now, Pieter knows what's happening here. He knows where the closets are. He knows where the skeletons are. He's a perfect guy to put in the oversight committee. Because in that transition period of 90 days, he's going to be looking over your shoulder what you're doing. And then after 90 days, and only after that period, we'll go to a normal political election. With the very important difference that any current party with a national mandate has got to change the way they think. It's now got to become relevant to the area that they've got to function in. And the canton, yeah.
How about entities like Eskom, SARNH, which I'm sure is no longer SARNH, and Post Office and Telkom and all that? Does that also go with the independence?
I think at the moment we can buy Eskom for $10 or something. Now, they all fall under the Capita taking over state assets. So they will all revert in ownership to the new sovereign state. And all employees will come over to the new sovereign state, and all pensions, all of them will, if you work in the Navy, for instance, and you're based in Simonstown, after independence, you come from the Eastern Cape. After independence, you'll have the choice. You stay on in the Western Cape, you'll get your temporary residency visa, you get your work permit, you complete your contract, then if it gets extended, you stay. If you want to go back, you go back. So it's got to be a fair dispensation.
Where does the money for CapeXit come from? Where is it being funded from? You want me to take the money?
That's the only question. That's the only question I can't answer.
The Guptas are out of it.
No, they meet once a week with them. No, I'm kidding. It's been said that we are being funded by George Soros and the Rothschilds. We're still waiting for that EFT. The money hasn't come yet. The truth of the matter is that CapeXit has been financed by the directors up to now. With Rian cycle tour, we had a tremendous amount of people stepping up to the plate, sponsoring accommodation, actually doing donations. And Rian will talk about that just now. We are now moving into the phase where we're saying we are a registered NPO. You have to have legitimacy before you ask for money. CapeXit is a registered. We started off as a registered non-profit company. We became a registered NPO, and now we're part of the Organisation of States. So we have the legitimacy to go to the public and say we are fully accountable for each and every rand you give to us. We've got to submit financial statements. We're not just a loose organisation that popped up overnight and asked for money, but we are going into that phase here of saying to people, we will never say sign a debit order. We will say give what you feel you can give, and then we see what we can go from there.
Is it a bit like outer?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I don't know outer that intimately, but it will be a voluntary basis. We absolutely believe in. We're not going to say to the 700,000 members, you must now each give 10 rand a month. We have to say, give what you feel you can give. But we're going to move to that phase. Yeah, it's been an expensive exercise for the last few years. The directors are all in the situation where the bank managers hate them because they're spending money on CapeX. No, just kidding.
I mean,
Ja. Jouw vraag?
Nee, ik heb vragen.
O, ek het nog nie hand opgehou.
Oh, nee.
Ja.
What measures are in place or being put in place to prevent? I know you talked about the similar to the Swiss canton system, but what measures are being put in place that we don't get a top-heavy government which get involved in areas where government is not supposed to get involved in?
Question, what prevents us from going back to a one-party top government situation? The answer is because you're going to be a direct democracy, the political landscape changes totally. A direct democracy in Switzerland or a canton system works on the basis that, let's say, Plettenberg's got 10,000 people that live here. And you want to tar that road at the bottom. Then there's a fixed percentage of the 10,000 people. If you hold a referendum or you get the support from 3,000 people, it's in your constitution that that road will be tarred down. Because you got the will of the people expressed in a percentage of what is required. So you can't go down or back to a top-heavy government because you've decentralized your seat of power down to the people, to the municipal level. And in fact, your central government will be very lean. It won't I think we've got the biggest central government at the moment. It sounds like SAA, they've got the most staff. I'm not going to say anything more about SAA. We've got to have a very lean central government that decides on foreign affairs, decides on fiscal policies, and don't meddle into the actual on-the-ground governments. That's where everything goes topsy-turvy at the moment.
if big money comes from corporations, many of them are centered in Cape. Let's just take Old Mutual for one. They would be reluctant, I'm assuming, to fund CapeX. They may wish to do this, they may have all the sympathy, but they would think we've got a problem.
Yeah.
With government will punish us.
Yes.
That's a problem. Well, it's an opportunity lost.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The comment is that the bigger corporations who's got very deep pockets will be reluctant to fund CapeXit or any independent drive for that matter, because they have a vested interest actually on a political basis in South Africa. They will also get to the point where they wake up one morning and realize that independence is busy happening. I always say independence has got to the point where it's much bigger than CapeXit, any individual in any organization. The idea of independence has grown to become its own entity. It's not going to be stopped. I can assure you that CapeXit can disappear today. The thought of independence is here to stay. If we had this discussion 5 years ago, you would have, 80% of you would have said no, it's not going to happen. Perhaps even 2 years ago. Today you're here because you want to know what is this independence thing about, and it's busy happening. It's not a case of it is going to happen. It's busy happening. We've got 775,000 people that's telling us let it happen. So, just like political parties, the bigger corporations will have to decide how do we want to play this. So the smaller guys are already saying, I'm moving my company with 25 people or 30 people. It will filter through. When Namibia became independent, the banks all stayed there. They didn't up and leave. So somebody said yesterday, how many companies are now moving their head office to Cape Town? It's quite a number. So I don't want to convince Old Mutual to support us. I want to convince 10 of the smaller corporations to support us. I want the support to be a thing of the heart, to be a thing of passion, to believe in. I don't want it to be a corporate exercise just to be seen to be doing the right thing. But we'll get them all this right.
What about aren't there other people who are trying to do this CapeXit type of thing as well as you?
Yeah. Question, are there other people doing it? Yes, there's a couple of organizations doing it. If you look at the organizations, you'll see that there's some subtle differences and there's some outright differences.
Yeah.
Whether it is in the area that they look at to secede, whether it's in the way that they want to go about it, there's a political pressure group. There's all subtle differences. We are the organization that's drawing the biggest support base in terms of registrations, so we're happy where we are. We do talk to other organizations. Under Dr. Peter Hammond, we started a thing called the Cape Independence Forum, where you come in by the door, you hang your party hat or your CapeXit hat or whatever, you hang it, and we sit around the table and we talk independence. We're not talking party politics, we're not talking about what you like or what I like.
So it wouldn't be more sensible for you all to get together, or is it
We do.
just too difficult?
We are getting together. Unfortunately, some people came in and they wanted to enforce their way of how it should happen, and we don't subscribe to that. We want to, when we associate with an organization or anybody, individual, it must be because they see independence the same way that we see it, and they believe in the same route to get there. But the good news is, each and every person that punts the word independence, it goes out there, and it sits there. And eventually the person that heard it is going to think, hang on, I must go and Google independence. That's where we want it. We don't care, come referendum day, who causes the ball to go over the goal line. The moment the touchdown is scored and we're independent, that's it. We all go to the same bride end.
And do you have a time aim?
Yes.
If we look at the growth in support, probably towards the end of this year we're going to come very close to where we want to be. We've got two psychological points. The one is 800,000, which is halfway, and the other one is 1 million, which is going to scare the politicians witless. But it's a psychological barrier. Once you're over 1 million, there's a lot of people that are sitting and support that idea, but they haven't registered. And they will say, we want to see if it's going to happen, and will it happen? And then it's a case of, I better register because I'm missing the bus here. So towards the end of this year, we want to have policy papers in place. Policy papers takes varying times depending on which portfolio you're writing. But the support base towards the end of this year should be very, very strong. And in a position where we can start getting up and saying, okay, this is what we want to happen.
And besides yourself, are there many people doing this type of thing?
Many people in CapeXit or organizations?
Yeah, CapeXit, going around and talking to people like
We're 5 directors. We all have working jobs. CapeXit is this little thing that we spend about 8 to 10 hours a day on, apart from our day job. So we all sleep about from 2 to 4 in the morning. But we've got a great team of people going around as activists. We've got an awareness team that pops up at robots and intersections on a Saturday morning and wave the flags and hand out these little flyers. I'm always in awe and humbled by the support we got from people, from us. I mean,
because I look at myself, I'm so thoroughly in support of this, but I didn't know about it till Andy mentioned it.
Yeah, it is. Danny has come with us for a long time already. Danny has seen us, how we've grown, how the people rally together, how they're good. It's true, because we would like to get the word out to everybody. People will say to us, one guy one day said to me, I've never heard of CapeXit. Where do you guys come from? I say, so what do you think of Tesla's new e-car? I said, who the hell is Tesla? I said, brother, Tesla is bigger than CapeXit. So the fact that we can't get people to make them aware of CapeXit comes back to the point where we depend on you to speak to your circle of friends and let them speak to their circle of friends. Our growth from 7,000 to 770,000 was exactly that. It was just spreading the word, sharing the word. We would like to have meetings like this 7 days a week. It's simply not possible. And it comes back to money, and I'll leave it to Rian.
If I can register with you, I can do that online.
Yes, yeah, via the website.
That's fine, but there are only a few of me. Why can't somebody in Mitchell's Plain ShopRite on Saturday morning? Or can
A
they?
lot of people don't have access to
Because
it.
that's, I'm a minority.
Yeah, yeah.
You need those big numbers.
So the question is, why not go to places like shopping centres and register there? Shopping centres per se is a difficult thing because they look at you and the first thing they say is you're political. And then we go and we prove we're not political. But they don't want to upset the status quo. So what we do is we do awareness drives like that where we register people, call it the guys walking past us, but we set up the gazebo on municipal ground. Because under the Protest Act we're allowed to protest for any cause on municipal ground. So we are doing it. But shopping centres are very hesitant to allow us to sit in the middle of the shopping centre.
Until it gets to a certain tipping point.
Yes, it will. Yeah. Look, the growth, we also the growth is organic at the moment, and we're happy with it. We don't want to. Tomorrow, what today is? No, tomorrow Sunday. We don't tomorrow want 200,000 registrations. If we climb 10, 15,000, 20,000, that's fine. Because when we get to that point where we want to be, this must be there at that point where we are.
How do you deal with, just further to this one, how do you deal with, you know, you want the steady growth and you don't want to go to shopping centres, and I understand that, but what about people that are hearing about it, especially in the other communities that want to maybe join but don't have access to go online and register and that? Where can they get a form and how can they get the form to you guys? You know, we email it back to you and or you register online. They don't have that access.
Question, how do we deal with people who are not electronically connected? That is why we have activists. We're setting up activists in all the areas. Pounding the pavement, going from door to door, and they're doing that very successfully. We get a call from Almersbury that says we're dropping off another 150 forms with you. And it's working. We would like it to work much quicker, but it is working. If we take where we started from point zero and where we are today, we've done well. Yeah. We will do better, but we've done well.
Most of those people who might not have all the, you know, like the emails or whatever, most of them actually do have internet or cell phones, and you can register on that.
Yeah.
But what I do is I print the form,
Yeah,
and then they take it home, and we, you know, encourage them and tell them about it and do that and do that. So, and then I just email it for them, scan and email. So,
You're an absolute star. You know, we get people from companies. We've got one company, Paul, who's it's an automotive company. The guy says in his shop it works like this. The guy walks in, he says, "Do you know about CapeXit?" The guy says, "No." He said, "Come, read here, sign." And when the guy's finished signing, he said, "Okay, so how can I help you today?" The support is tremendous. Rian stayed over at Albertina Hotel, and I stopped on my way here. And as I walked into the foyer, I saw the CapeXit poster up there. So people are rallying to the cause, and the support is there.
Where do you get posters if we want to put them up?
You must actually contact me on my email address, info@CapeXit, and then I will direct you through to the marketing guys. Yeah.
And I'll get a bumper sticker.
Absolutely.
Bumper stickers are good.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some.
I don't think you can just put posters on there.
We're going to leave Rian with the most important thing, and that is to the donations. But thanks a lot. It was great talking to you. And once we've wrapped up the live stream, then we'll stick around. If you've got any questions, you can ask me. Thank you.
Guys, it's a very, very sensitive topic, this money thing. Let me tell you from my experience in planning the cycle tour. I got sponsors from a lot of people to support not only my progress and the tour, but also CapeXit. And what I found was that people are in huge corporate companies. I don't want to name names. Our live stream's going out. This is not subliminal advertising. So large corporate companies said to me, we fully for example, an franchise holder would say to me, we fully support CapeXit and independence, but head office has a national client base that they don't want to offend, so we can't get involved. So it is a problem to get funding. We desperately require funding because a lot of the questions about what happens out in the communities is based purely on the funds that we have available. And we are not a political organization, nor are we beggars for people's money. Independence is the most important thing. But to get there, I used the example in Mossel Bay yesterday. CapeXit is a vehicle that drives, you get onto the CapeXit bus and you drive towards independence. A referendum rather. People will decide whether it's independence or not. But you get to the point of a referendum. That's where we want to be. And that vehicle needs fuel. That's a fact. It's not like we're begging for money and monthly contributions and you must pay to be a member and all that sort of thing. But we need contributions. Can you imagine all the draft paperwork that needs to be done? All the legal costs to get those people. You can't walk around the street and say, we need a draft paper, policy paper on education. Any volunteers? You can't. It'll be nonsense. So all of those things need to be in place for us to successfully secede from South Africa. So funding is critically important. But large corporations, like large political parties, have a national mandate that they have to take care of. That is why they are hesitant. Does not mean from the bottom of their hearts they don't support it. They can't publicly state it. So if you guys, anybody at home, our banking details are available everywhere. I can give it to you again. We will appreciate a contribution. Deeply appreciate it because it will be put to good use. This is not about buying fancy cars. This is about independence. And that's what it's about. For all of us. We work literally, we live, eat, sleep, CapeXit and independence. With the highest one, the highest priority, independence. Not CapeXit. Independence for all of us. That's our highest priority. So, yes, if there is anybody out there willing to contribute to the cause, we greatly appreciate it. Guys, thank you again for coming. I really appreciate it. You can.
One question.
Yes, sir.
What's going to happen with all the container ships that's going to flood the harbour in Cape Town?
That's going to plug the harbour.
Flood.
Flood.
That's the only simple question I have.
I'll tell you what. You want to answer that question?
Did I mention about Rotterdam?
Yes,
yeah.
I mentioned about Rotterdam. There's a 5-stage development plan for the Port of Cape Town. One problem the port is facing is handling the container trucks waiting to load. So the suggestion is the old Culemborg site will be flattened and it will be converted into a truck stop. Everything will be computerized. The driver will get a WhatsApp saying you're loading in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So that takes the congestion out of port. It frees up more space so you can do another berth or 2 or 3. So there's definitely a 5-phase plan at the moment on the table from the port authorities.
They're not going to fix the suicide easily.
We'll just send another ship to park across the Suez in the street.
I want to say I thoroughly agree with automation completely, but in this country, in a way, it does people a bit out of jobs. So
We must think in the context of a new country.
no, but there's a whole population of the old country that is going to be prosperous.
You see, it all boils down to economics. And issues as far as work, earning a salary, getting a roof over your head, putting your kids in school will be solved if we can look after our own money.
Yes, but I don't truly believe in sponsorship who are hale and hearty. So
For people?
for people who are healthy.
There's two priorities that the new country proposed. Look, CapeXit will never say, this is what's going to happen and this is what we're going to do. Because we won't. The new government, the new people, the people will elect, but there will probably be elderly and sickly.
Yes, absolutely.
That's it.
And the
The
children.
sick,
And
you
the
look after the sick and the lame, not the lazy.
Correct.
Okay. So I
Correct.
just wanted this great thing here. Is this the only presentation in Plet? Because why are we here and not in a big community hall?
I'll
would
tell
have-
you why,
would have
again.
got 200 people.
Firstly, I must, straight answer, we were invited and the venue was sponsored by Andy and Doris. They said to CapeXit, come out to Howberry Hills, we'll sponsor the venue, invite people out. We could go to the town hall in Plet, but we can't afford it. We can't afford big venues from a CapeXit point of view. And that's the blunt, honest truth. I'm not going to stand here and say to you, oh, well, there's this excuse and that excuse. It's a matter, and I want to add to that, ladies and gentlemen, and it's vastly important. We can pound the streets for another 10 years. We can. We can put activists in every town across this beautiful province. We would like to have an ad running on every radio station every day for the next 6 months. To inform, not to make money, not to ask for contributions, not to say, listen, this is CapeXit, these are banking details, please. No. To make people aware of the feasibility and the possibility and the reality of independence. But we can't afford a radio station. I, on the cycle tour, spoke to, I think, 5 radio stations who contacted CapeXit and said, what the hell is this guy doing? What is he all about? Curiosity. The large media companies, the large newspapers, the radio stations, they stay away because they think they're going to get a hiding behind closed doors from whoever, the powers that be, so they distance themselves. You are crazy. We don't want to talk about independence. It'll never happen, and all the rest of it. Where in the meantime, they go to bed and they register, or they go to their house, go to bed, go to sleep. They go back home and they register with CapeXit, but the boss doesn't know. But the radio station cannot say, yes, come on, please. I'll tell you what, if we pay them, they'll broadcast anything. Under the conditions of the radio station, obviously. But you've heard the ad before. The following ad was paid for by the party involved. And they ended off again by saying, this ad was paid for by the party involved. If you pay the radio stations, they will broadcast anything subject to their conditions. But we can't afford 25,000 Rand for 2 minutes. We can't. That's what I'm saying. Contributions into CapeXit will make the wheels turn quicker. And I'm not saying independence brought closer. Get the information where it's required. Newspapers, radio stations, internet advertisements, etc., etc., etc. It just goes on and on and on. Importantly also is funding of legal minds, people that can do draft policy, get those wheels greased. Not my wheels. I'm an estate agent. I work 18 hours a day. It's not for me. It's not for Des. It's for independence. To get CapeXit, get the right people to do the job. That's what we need money for. And that's the bottom line, from my heart. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks for watching, guys at home. We'll be in touch. Please stay in touch with CapeXit. See you guys. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.